So today we're going to be talking about how to get the most out of search in your knowledge base. This is one of those questions we get asked all of the time in support. And I'm going to walk through sort of low level to high level, least involved to most involved, the things that you can do to try to maximize search in your knowledge base. Let me show my screen before I forget to do that as well. So first and foremost, there's nothing super fancy you have to do to get your content indexed for search. This is one of those early questions we get from folks, stuff like, do I have to add tags? Do I have to add search phrases? The short answer to that is no. We automatically index a whole bunch of fields for search out of the box. So most of the time you can dump content directly into KnowledgeOwl and it will just start working in search. You can see the fields that we automatically index by going to settings and search. And there's a whole bunch of settings here in addition to the search weights fields, which are the fields that we actually index, that might impact your search behavior. So here you can control whether search is paginated, if you allow sorting, whether you're using fuzzy search or not, if you want to include glossary terms in your search results, what the article blurbs that we return as part of search results look like. We have two options to kind of allow folks to be able to filter your search results by top level category or second level category. This just adds like a little refine box to the search parameters, basically. You also have the option to exclude a whole category from search if you've got some internal category that you don't ever want showing up. And by default, we will index PDFs that are included in your content, but only if they are under 100 pages. So if you have a whole bunch of longer PDFs that you really want to be sure are getting indexed, you can check the box to index the content of PDFs longer than 100 pages. Obviously, since that's a lot of content, it does have the ability to skew your search results. So this is why we don't do it by default. But so out of the box, anything that is in an article title, the URL or the permalink that you set up for it, the body of the content, everything that you put in the editor, any PDFs that you include within the body of that article, the meta description, and any search phrases you add is included in our search algorithms. Let me pause there for a second. One of the questions we get asked a lot is, we have these two fields for editing content that seem to be search related. I promise it's a different tab. If you're looking at any given article, it helps if I actually click. We've got tags and we have search phrases. And very often people come in and think, oh, I need to add tags or I need to add search phrases or nothing's going to be indexed. Since we automatically index the body and the title and the permalink and all those things, you don't need to do that. But so what would these fields be used for? Tags actually run a totally different search than the main text search that gets run. So you type in a phrase, we're hitting our main search algorithms here, we're spitting stuff back to you. I will look for anything that has this phrase in title, body, permalink, all of those places. The only way that you can get at tags, the only search that they impact is if you do a tag specific search. You'll see that that has this little colon at the front of it. If you've been tagging a bunch of stuff and nobody knows how to do a tag search, there's a really good chance that nobody's actually leveraging that tag search, because it only happens if you know to put in that colon or you click on a tag that appears in search results. So if you've been doing that thinking that it's helping with your main search algorithms, you can stop. You're not probably using your time in the best way there. And you'll see here between these two, since we don't use tags a great deal, if I just search the phrase, I get all kinds of results here because it's going to look for anything that's got either one of those words, related or articles. If I put it into quotes, it'll look for the exact thing, which gets me into much more specific details. But a lot of these don't have that particular tag. This is part of why we build search to be so robust out of the box. We don't want you to have to go in and add stuff for it to work. We just want to be able to scrape that content and automatically return it for you. Search phrases will factor into main search, and I will get to those in a moment. So, tip number one here, it's not what we need, is to be sure that what you're doing in your search settings actually makes sense for your knowledge base. So if you want pagination, if you want auto suggest to happen, if you want to have filters, be sure that those are selected and that those settings make sense for you. Test them out a little bit, play with them, see what is going to be the best fit for you or not. This is like the absolute bare minimum that you can do to kind of tweak search. Working up from there is not actually a search setting whatsoever. It's what I call just good content practice. So paying attention to which fields we index for search and being sure that you're getting the most out of those fields. So if you've got something that, in our case, we reference the idea of categories a whole bunch, right? If I've got a page that I really want to be returned about categories, I need to make sure that it's got the word category or categories in the title. If I can get it into the permalink, that's great. My body should mention it because it's probably the bulk of the content that it is displaying in there. And I need to be sure that I've got a meta description that's going to reference categories as well. Even if my search blurbs aren't displaying the meta description, we will use it to help factor all of, into the search results and how we display them in the order that we display them in. So paying attention to style guide things, making sure you're consistently calling the same thing by the same word across your documentation. Those can go a long way to help you tweak search without having to actually meddle with search, like search weights and other complicated things. Those are the easiest places to start. Now, let's get into the stuff that's a little bit more complicated, because this is usually what people have trouble figuring out on their own. So by default, we index these 6 fields: title, permalink, body, PDFs, meta description, and search phrases. And we allow you to have some control over the search weights of each of those fields. So when you get a fresh knowledge base right out of the box, what we typically do is we'll set title to a weight of 10 and everything else to a weight of 1. This allows you to say, okay, so if, I have 2 articles that are otherwise identical, but one of them has stuff in the title, I want that returned first. So the search weights don't say, I want to hide something from search. What they determine is the order that those search results are displayed in. So you can bump up the weight on something or lower the weight on something to kind of dial in your search. I do not recommend doing this with a brand new knowledge base. The only time I tend to touch search weights is if I have a question or somebody had trouble finding something and that surfaces a problem in search that I'm like, why didn't that thing return what I was expecting in the top 10? And that's kind of where the rest of this talk is going to focus, is like, okay, so search seems to be working pretty well generally. How do we dial it in for specific cases where we're not quite getting what we expect? So the first of those is to play around with the weights. The easiest way to do this is to make a change to your weights. So let me take the title back to 1 for a second here. Don't save any changes here and hop down into the search testing section and try out your sample phrase. What this will do is it'll actually run a search using the new weights that you selected up above, and then it'll give you the score that gets generated for that phrase, and will give you basically the order of what it would return if you saved these weights. So this allows you, once you've got like a problem phrase or a problem word to test with, to play around with, okay, so I'm mostly getting what I want here, but let me try that again. Take my title back to where it was. My order does change a little bit here. I'm seeing more of the things that start directly with create a blah, blah, blah at the top. So that's probably a really good setting for me. The cool thing about playing with search weights is that once you make a change, you can save it, and that change immediately goes out to change your search results. So it'll immediately start changing the order of the results that get returned to your people. Again, I would only do this once you have a specific use case that you're trying to work with. And that leads me into search phrases, which are one of those fun features that can be used in a couple different ways. So as I mentioned before, when we're looking at a given article, we have that tags field and the search phrases field. We don't have to put anything into either of those fields. Search phrases, we definitely don't have to put anything in because we're already grabbing the content in the body in the title, the permalink. So there are two use cases you might want to use search phrases for. One of them is if there is a phrase or a word that is not directly contained in your content that you want searching this article to return. So let me pull up an example here. We have a search phrase in our contact support article that is create a ticket. And since we weight search phrases at 30 and most everything else is at 1, that means that anything we put in the search phrase field is going to bump something up. This also allows us to add, alternatives, synonyms, that kind of thing in, so that we don't necessarily have to handle every permutation of a phrase directly in our article body, which is awesome. However, in this particular case, this setup is causing me a little bit of grief because when I search create, how do I contact support is currently the #1 listed result in our support knowledge base. That's probably not the thing that I most want people to see here, because usually when folks are searching for this, they're like, oh, I want to create a new thing, like whatever this new object is. So in this case, I've got two options. One would be I could bump our search phrase weighting way down. I'm not going to do that because we have a very good reason for having it higher. The second would be to actually remove create a ticket as the search phrase here. I could maybe rework it into the body of the article. For this demonstration, I'm just going to remove that search phrase. And what you'll see is that my search results now update and I'm getting all the stuff that is creative, which is probably going to get me closer to what I want. Now, what I might do here would be to do something like open a ticket or just add the word ticket in here, because that would likely be enough to drive people the places that I want to go without overlapping with create, which is really a keyword that we use in a whole bunch of our documentation. That's one way you can use search phrases as this oh, this phrase doesn't exist here and I want it to kind of be in this content. I want somebody to find this if they search it, but I don't want to have to work all of that into the body of my content. It's a great use for search phrases. The other use for them, and this is why I'm not changing my search phrase weight of 30 back here, is that they can be really useful for forcing order in your search results. So as you can see, if I search create, I get 22 pages of results from our knowledge base. And I might want to get really picky about maybe what the top 2 or 3 of these are. So what I could do at this point would be to pick what I think those are. Maybe create a public knowledge base might be one of those, or create a new article, both pretty popular. I could go in and add the create search phrase only to those 2 articles. And what that would do is it will bump them way up in the search results list, even though they already have those words, because we've got this high search phrase of 30 weight here. This is one way you can kind of leverage search phrases to curate a little bit of those common search phrases that you get. So in my case, what I think I will do here, let me pick an even more common example, which is article. And you'll see my top links here aren't actually things that are very central to creating and working with articles. And generally, if folks are searching for something as vague as article, they're pretty new to KnowledgeOwl. They're not really sure what an article is. And I have to scroll pretty far down this to get to what I think would be that sort of beginner entry-level content. So what I'm going to do is hop in here and find what I think is really key beginner entry-level content. So in this case, create a new article feels like it might be a really good one. This is a topic display category. Topic display categories and custom content categories get the same search indexing fields that articles do. So I can come in here and say, all right, I want to add article here. And thanks to my search weights, now create a new article will be the first thing that gets returned because it's the only article that has that particular search phrase. So it's a nice way to kind of cherry pick certain things, bump them up there. You can play around with that search weight a little bit to see if you want it quite as high as we have it. It's a great way to use it. And kind of piggybacking off of that, So that first use case of search phrases where I'm putting stuff in because I don't have that wording directly in my content, but I want this to be returned. There are some cases where doing that in an individual article makes total sense because it's just like a one-off thing, like our how to contact support. That's a one-off thing. But there are other cases where you've got a synonym or a phrase that you know people search for that actually is something else in your knowledge base. So for us, that might be the phrase knowledge base as 2 words. We're very particular about that in our style guide. We have strong opinions that it's 2 words with a space in between them. And we officially use that everywhere that we say the word knowledge base. But a lot of our end users don't have strong opinions about the space. So they might do it as a single word, or they might abbreviate it in some fashion. And what I could do on a lot of the documentation that mentions knowledge base is to add search phrases for each of those permutations, but that puts a lot of work on me. It means that I have to remember to do that. It means I have to be consistent in doing that. We want to avoid that wherever possible. I'm a human, I'm prone to error. This is where setting up search synonyms can really help you out. So if you have official terminology you use that has an acronym or an abbreviation or some other permutation that your end users might search for, the best way to handle that is to set up a synonym. So what you do is you define the base word, which is sort of the official word that you're using in your documentation, and then the alternate synonyms that you want to translate to that word. Synonyms, that then means that anybody who searches for one of these synonyms will actually get content returned that has the base word in it with no other magic on my end. I don't have to think about it when I create content. I will have to reindex my knowledge base for search if I add synonyms. And that reindex process can run anywhere from like a minute or 2 to 10 minutes, depending on the size of the knowledge base. So it's one of those things you want to plan for. Maybe like you can save all your new synonyms, but run the reindex like on a Friday night before you go home or something like that, just to be sure you're not going to have any adverse effects. But so I can come out here and search for one of these synonyms, and you'll see everything I'm getting, even the highlighting here, is giving me the base word back. So it's a really great way to kind of look at what are my end users actually searching for versus what do I call it? And let me build some smarts into that, into the synonyms, to take the pressure off of a content creator to try to think of every possible permutation. It's a good use for acronyms. It's a good use for things where like people might add a space where there isn't a space, or you insist on a space where other people don't insist on a space. We use it for a few acronyms. It can be a real time saver because once you set up that synonym once, it applies to all content across your entire knowledge base. No more thought required. Aside from that, the only other sort of ongoing way that we tend to tweak and work on our search is by looking at our searches with no results report, which is in the reporting dashboard, way down here at the bottom. This allows you to kind of take a look and see what are people searching for that they're not getting anything back. Maybe this is a content gap. Maybe this is a place that I need to add synonyms. Maybe this is a place where a search phrase would be helpful. All 3 of these YouTube ones were me testing something, so those aren't that big of a concern. But what we capture here is what the phrase was. If you have reader groups set up in your knowledge base, what reader groups was the person a member of when they searched for it? Because sometimes you might have restricted content that they just don't have access to. Also, if you have that option set to refine by categories, we'll tell you if they had refined by categories here, which can help you figure out if you want to like add shared content into a category that other people might be searching from within. We'll also let you know where that search occurred. So if it occurred from within the knowledge base, or if you are using our contextual help widget, we'll let you know what page they were on when that search was triggered and when it happened. And this goes back quite a far ways. You can choose to export this to CSV to work in it. It can just help give you a little bit more insight into what people are actually searching for that might impact your content or your synonym choices or some of those things. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop recording.